I'm 30F and I have a younger brother named Adam, 26M. We've never been close, and honestly, we don't get along. Growing up, Adam was always treated like the golden child. When we were kids, I used to think I just needed to try harder to win my parents' approval, but nothing I did ever made a difference. It was all about Adam. He didn't have to do much to get praise, while I had to practically move mountains to get a good job. My breaking point came at 18 when my parents threw me a small birthday party, but just a couple of hours into it, Adam got caught drinking at a park with friends. All the other kids ran, but Adam stayed put, almost as if he wanted to get caught. The cops let him off with a warning. My dad's a cop, so that wasn't a shock. But my parents left my party to go pick him up. When they brought him home, they didn't punish him. Instead, they spent the rest of the evening focused on him, and my birthday was completely forgotten. That wasn't the last time something like this happened. A few years later, at 21, I came home excited to announce that I'd landed my first job. But before I could finish telling my parents, Adam showed up and announced he was engaged. My moment was stolen again. I was heartbroken and furious. I yelled, trying to make them understand how I felt, but instead of listening, they told me I was overreacting. That day, I realized I'd had enough and cut contact with all of them. For the next 9 years, I focused on myself. I started my own business, worked my way up, and now I'm proud to say I'm doing pretty well. I've got my own house, a nice car, and a career I'm passionate about. Adam, on the other hand, hasn't been as lucky. From what I've heard through the family grapevine, he tried starting a business a few years ago, but it crashed and burned, leaving him drowning in debt. My parents bailed him out, of course. Since then, he hasn't really done much other than party, and his reputation is in the gutter. About 2 weeks ago, I posted a celebratory update on social media, a small announcement about my business getting featured in a local magazine. It got a lot of attention, especially from old friends and family members. I guess Adam saw it too, because not long after, he showed up outside my house, a place I had made sure not to share with any of my immediate family. I didn't even know he'd been there until I went outside to find my car completely vandalized. He'd spray-painted it with curse words and insults, but what really got to me was the phrase he wrote on my windshield, "You don't deserve any of this." It was infuriating. But instead of calling the cops, I checked my security camera footage. Sure enough, Adam was caught on tape. He hadn't even been careful about covering his face. I knew if I called the cops, my dad would step in and make sure Adam didn't face any real consequences. So I did something different. I posted the video and photos on social media detailing exactly what had happened. It wasn't long before people started commenting and sharing the post. Friends, family, everyone saw it. I made sure to unblock my family so they wouldn't miss it either. It didn't take long for Adam to reach out. He texted me, furious, demanding I take it down. I refused. I told him that I wanted a public apology or the post would stay up. He tried threatening me, saying he'd take legal action, but he knew he didn't have a leg to stand on. I had undeniable proof. If he tried to push this in court, it would only make things worse for him. 2 days later, my parents called. I wasn't surprised. I knew they'd come running to protect their precious son. My mom started crying, saying I was ruining our family and that Adam's life would be destroyed if I didn't take the post down. She even tried to guilt-trip me, saying I'd become cruel and heartless. But I didn't cave. I told her I wasn't doing it for attention or out of spite. I just wanted Adam to face the consequences for once. The post stayed up. Friends, family members, even people I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out, telling me I was right to stand my ground. It was validating. But more importantly, it made Adam finally see that he couldn't just bully me into submission like before. After a few days, he reached out again, this time offering to pay for the damages. He said he was sorry and would give me whatever I asked for. But I don't want his money. I want him to take responsibility for his actions. And unless he publicly acknowledges what he did, that post is staying up. For now, my parents haven't called again, and Adam is still trying to negotiate through text. But I'm not budging. I'm tired of always being the bigger person. If he wants this to end, he'll have to own up to what he did. It's been almost 2 weeks since I posted the video, and things have escalated way more than I expected. Adam is panicking. He's been calling and texting constantly, trying to convince me to take the post down. But I've stood my ground. No apology, no deal. He's even tried to gaslight me, saying it was just a harmless prank. But I know what it really was, an attempt to hurt me because he couldn't handle seeing me succeed. He must have realized I wasn't going to budge because a few days ago, my dad showed up at my house. It was pretty early in the morning, and I was just about to head out for work when I heard a knock. I was surprised to see him standing there, looking worn out and much older than I remembered. He hadn't been in touch for years, so I knew he wasn't there for a friendly catch-up. I let him in, and without wasting any time, he got straight to the point. "Take down the post." I told him no, just as calmly as I could manage, but he kept pushing. He said Adam had been practically ostracized. No one in the family wanted to speak to him anymore. Some of his old friends had cut ties, too. My dad went on and on about how Adam had suffered enough and that I was being heartless for dragging this out. Heartless? I scoffed. The only reason this is happening is because you and Mom let him get away with this kind of behavior for years. You never made him face the consequences, and now, because of that, he thinks he can do whatever he wants and you'll swoop in to protect him. Well, guess what, Dad? This time, I'm not going to make it easy for him. That's when he shifted tactics. He leaned back in his chair, sighed, and started with the guilt trips. He said I was tearing the family apart, that I was ruining his reputation as a retired police officer. He even tried to appeal to our shared history, asking me to think about the family name, but I didn't flinch. I had no intention of backing down. I'm not ruining anything. This is your mess, not mine. I'm tired of being the one to bend and accommodate. If he's really sorry, all he has to do is apologize. Publicly. My dad's face hardened. He stared at me for a long moment, then said in a low voice, "You're being unreasonable. You've already made your point. Why are you pushing this? He's your brother." "Yeah, the same brother who went out of his way to ruin my car because he couldn't handle that I'm doing better. This isn't about being family. This is about him owning up to his actions." We argued for almost an hour. At one point, he even tried to claim that I was the one acting childish. But I knew he was only saying that because he was desperate. He didn't have any leverage over me, and he could see that I wasn't going to fold ... finally, after what felt like forever. He stood up, threw his hands in the air, and said, "Fine. If you want to play it this way, we'll see what happens." And then he left. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought maybe my dad would go home, have a serious talk with Adam, and finally get him to apologize. But no, they decided to go a different route. The next day, I got a knock on the door. This time, it was my parents, both of them, and they weren't alone. They brought along a family friend who also happens to be a lawyer. I was shocked. They seriously went this far? My dad stepped forward and, with a stern face, told me they were considering taking legal action. They'd spoken to the family lawyer, and apparently they were looking into a defamation lawsuit. My dad handed me a thick envelope and said, "This is a formal notice. Either take down the post, or we'll have to settle this in court." I couldn't believe it. A lawsuit? Over a Facebook post? I stared at the envelope for a second, then laughed. "Are you kidding me?" I asked. "You're really going to sue your own daughter to protect your delinquent son?" My mom, who had been quiet this whole time, stepped forward, her eyes pleading. "Please, just take it down. This is getting out of hand. We don't want to hurt you. We just want things to go back to normal." "Normal?" I repeated, stunned. "You mean like when you ignored me and treated Adam like he was the only kid that mattered?" She flinched. "That's not fair. We've always cared about you." "No, you didn't. You cared about him. Everything was always about him. Even now, you're here to protect him, not because you actually care about what he did." They started talking over each other, trying to justify everything they'd done, making excuses for Adam like they always have. But I shut them down. "If you think I'm scared of a lawsuit, you're wrong. Go ahead, file it. I have proof of what he did. I'll win, and I'll make sure the entire town knows who he really is." The room went silent. The lawyer looked uncomfortable. My parents looked devastated, but I wasn't backing down. "Get out of my house," I said firmly, "and tell Adam that if he ever comes near me again, I'll go to the police. I don't care what Dad tries to do. I'll get a restraining order if I have to." They left without another word. The moment they were gone, I felt my hands start to shake. I couldn't believe what had just happened. They really tried to intimidate me with a lawsuit. My own parents. I called my lawyer the next day and showed him the papers. He was just as shocked as I was, but he reassured me that they didn't have a case. If they actually tried to sue, it would only make things worse for them because I had evidence of everything. We decided to file for a restraining order against Adam just in case. I didn't want him showing up again and trying to start more trouble. It's been a few days since that confrontation, and I haven't heard anything from them since. But I did get a few texts from my relatives asking if I was okay. Apparently, my parents have been trying to paint me as the villain, saying I'm being cruel and vindictive for no reason. But my relatives know the truth. They've seen the video. They've read the post. And they're on my side. I guess my parents didn't expect that. They thought they could manipulate the narrative like they always have. But this time, they were wrong. I'm not scared of them anymore. I'm not the same person I was when I was 18. I'm not afraid to stand up for myself. If they want to keep pushing this, I'll keep fighting. But I'm not taking that post down. Not unless Adam steps up and does the right thing. After the confrontation with my parents and the legal threats they tried to throw at me, things got quiet for a while. I guess they were regrouping, trying to figure out their next move. Meanwhile, I went ahead and filed for a restraining order against Adam. I didn't want to wait around and see if he'd try something else. The restraining order was granted pretty quickly, considering the evidence I had against him. It felt good, knowing that I'd taken steps to protect myself. I was expecting them to retaliate in some way, but I was genuinely caught off guard by what happened next. About a week later, I got a call from a mutual friend who used to be close with both Adam and me. He said he'd heard from some old high school friends that Adam was dealing with some pretty heavy stuff, and I don't just mean emotionally. He was apparently tangled up in a lot of shady activities. People had been talking about it for a while, but now it seemed like it was catching up to him. The friend warned me to be careful because Adam wasn't just upset about the post anymore. He was furious that I had gone to the extent of getting a restraining order. Apparently, in his mind, that was the ultimate betrayal, as if he was the one who had been wronged. I couldn't believe it. How twisted could his thinking be? But then again, he'd always believed that the rules didn't apply to him. I thanked the friend for the heads up and made a note to be extra cautious, but I didn't really think much would come of it. I underestimated how petty and vindictive Adam could be. The next morning, I woke up to find that someone had thrown eggs at my front door. Not a big deal, right? But the thing is, it wasn't just eggs. They'd also spray-painted something on my driveway. B*TCH in huge bright red letters. It didn't take a genius to figure out who was behind it. I went straight to check my security cameras. Sure enough, it was Adam. He'd come by in the middle of the night wearing the same hoodie he wore when he vandalized my car. The nerve of him. I saved the footage and called my lawyer immediately. He told me this was exactly why we'd filed for the restraining order, and that now Adam had officially violated it. The moment I heard those words, a strange sense of relief washed over me. Finally, I had something that couldn't be ignored, even by my dad's old colleagues. The next day, we submitted the footage to the court and notified the police. Because Adam had violated the restraining order, they had to act. He was picked up later that evening and taken into custody. For the first time, my brother was facing real consequences. And this time, my dad couldn't make it go away with a phone call. But the fallout didn't end there. When Adam was arrested, they found something else in his car. A bag of illegal substances. Turns out, the rumors about him being involved in shady stuff weren't just rumors. The police found enough to charge him with possession, and because of the amount, it looked like they were going to pursue intent to distribute as well. I was stunned when I heard the news. My dad called me that night, completely losing it. He was screaming and shouting, blaming me for everything. "This is all your fault!" he roared into the phone. "If you'd just taken down the stupid post, none of this would have happened." But I stayed calm. "No, Dad," I said quietly. "This is his fault. He made these choices. He could have walked away at any point, but he didn't." There was silence on the other end of the line. For the first time, I think he realized that I wasn't just some scared little girl he could push around anymore. "You don't understand," he muttered, his voice cracking. "You've ruined his life." I almost laughed. "No, Dad, he did that all by himself." He hung up on me, and I knew that was the last time I'd ever hear from him. I felt a pang of sadness, but it quickly faded. I wasn't going to let myself feel guilty for standing up for myself. Over the next few days, the news about Adam spread through our entire family. Some of them reached out to me, offering support, while others kept their distance, unsure what to say. I could see the social media posts from my parents' old friends, all the vague references to family troubles and betrayal. I didn't care. Let them talk. Then, something unexpected happened. My mom showed up at my doorstep. She looked broken, like she'd aged 10 years in just a few weeks. I didn't want to let her in, but something in her eyes made me hesitate. So I opened the door and stepped aside. She didn't say anything for a long time. She just stood there, looking around my house like she was seeing it for the first time. Finally, she turned to me and whispered, "Please, make this go away." I was taken aback. "What? Please, just drop the charges, take down the post, make it all stop. He's your brother." I felt my chest tighten. "He's not my brother, not anymore." "Please," she begged, tears welling up. "We'll lose everything. Your father, his career, our reputation. Everything we've built. We'll lose it all." I stared at her, feeling nothing but numbness. "What did you think was going to happen, Mom? Did you think you could keep protecting him forever? That he'd magically change if you just kept covering up his mistakes?" Her shoulders shook with silent sobs, but I didn't move to comfort her. I couldn't. I was too tired, too drained from years of being overlooked and dismissed. "Please, he's going to jail," she whispered. "He'll be locked up. They're saying 10, maybe 15 years. His life is over." For a second, I almost faltered. Almost. But then I remembered the way he looked in that security footage, spray-painting vile words on my car with that smug, entitled expression. He didn't care about ruining my life. He never did. "I can't help you," I said softly. "You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it." She looked at me like I'd slapped her, then turned and walked out without another word. I closed the door and stood there for a long time, just breathing. I didn't know how to feel. Relief, sadness, anger? Maybe all three. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to back down. A few weeks later, the court case went through. Adam was sentenced to 12 years. It was surreal, watching him stand there in handcuffs, finally facing the consequences of his actions. He looked small and terrified. Nothing like the arrogant little brat I'd grown up with. But I didn't feel sorry for him. My parents didn't show up for the sentencing. I guess they couldn't bear to see what had become of their golden child. I heard they moved away shortly after to start over somewhere new. I haven't heard from them since. As for me, I'm finally free. Free of their expectations, their manipulations, their guilt trips. It took a long time, but I finally stood up for myself. And for once, I didn't bend. I'm going to be okay.